Our big story is Nvidia on track for a third straight session of declines, the slump nearing $300 billion in losses for the tech giant's market cap. Now, this comes ahead of the company's shareholder meeting this week. One of those shareholders joining us now, we've got Paul Meeks. He's Co-CIO of Harvest Portfolio Management. Paul, it's great to speak with you, and thanks so much for taking the time with us this morning. I'm curious from your perspective how you are digesting the movement that we've seen with Nvidia stock over the last couple of days, and does it change anything about your thinking when it comes to your holdings of Nvidia?
So last thing first, doesn't change anything. I think what's happened, the stock has just done so well. Now there's some talk about peak data center AI sales. And of course, that has to happen at some point. But I think the near term to even the intermediate term over the next couple of years, Madison, is I don't think there's really much controversy about that. I think what happens on Wednesday when they have their annual shareholders meeting, at some point in the presentation, and it starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time, Jensen Huan will strut to the stage. That was not released in the press release for the event, but I imagine that's the case. It's essentially industry standard. And will probably, again, articulate the wonderfulness of AI. And the key here is to make investors feel comfortable that there is a long runway yet. So I think what happens here, we have some profit taking, some worry about peak sales. I think we'll have a reversal and the stock will rebound based on the remarks from CEO Jensen Huan on Wednesday morning Pacific time.
Well, it's interesting, Paul, because I wonder if part of the problem with a company like Nvidia is that the growth has so outpaced expectations, and it's such a new name for folks to get used to. Is part of the problem that the math of analysts behind this name is sort of lagging, and therefore we don't have a great insight and transparency into Nvidia's growth story?
That's right. That's right. Because if you believe, and I think you must believe, that the company will continue to upside numbers. I mean, they have scorched the quarterly numbers for about, as you know, a year and a half, ever since the advent in November 22 of ChatGPT. And I think you can probably expect more of the same. The interesting thing is the company does not pre-announce numbers. Because what happens when you start pre-announcing numbers and then you stop, you can see what happened a couple of quarters ago with Supermicro SMCI, which is another company in this space. So I expect them to continue to beat numbers. I expect them to continue to push a narrative, which I do believe is true, that the AI chip boom will last longer than people will expect because there'll be much more large language model building and then inference work at all of the hyperscalers and the other guys that are spending tens of billions of dollars to continue to build out AI infrastructure.
So that helps give some insight into what you look at to suss out the growth story for Nvidia. But when you see market moves like the ones we're seeing right now, do you take that as a buy signal?
No, what I'm looking at is I'm pretty comfortable with the fundamentals. And I'm pretty comfortable that there will be a fundamental push upwards on the annual meeting later this week, Wednesday morning. What I'm looking now is I do want to buy some more. I'm inclined to buy some more, but I'm looking for a technical support. I had thought it was going to be about the 20-day moving average, which is actually where the stock is right now. And so now I'll probably wait to see if it settles lower at the 50-day moving average. So comfortable with the fundamentals, not comfortable with the technicals, and just looking for some technical support where the stock finds support for a couple of days, the volume dries up a little bit, and then I'm inclined to go back in because I think that's the right move. I don't believe that this is a stock that should be shorted here or even sold here.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, too. We've been hearing the question about concentration valuation. I feel like that's been the reigning cry from a lot of notes over the past year or so, Paul. To what extent does the valuation piece play into your overall investment outlook, not just your Nvidia holdings, but your overall portfolio when it comes to tech in general?
Yeah, the way I look at it, and of course you have to talk about Nvidia because it dominates my sector. Is this stock expensive? Maybe a little bit expensive after its most recent run before this drop off, but it had not been. And if you take a look at probably the closest compare, here is Cisco Systems building out the internet infrastructure in the very late 90s, very early 2000s. And that stock got up to over 100 times earnings. And so here we are at 30, 40 times earnings. Is it cheap? No. Is it a little bit expensive? Yes. Is it egregiously expensive? No. So I actually think that I'm not so worried about the valuation, and I'm looking for that technical stability before I go back and add to the position. So, of course, my position is already quite large.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Paul, for joining us. Really appreciate it. That was Paul Meeks, CIO, and also a shareholder in Nvidia.